I practiced self-love every day for a year. I'm going to explain a bit about what my experience was like and what it's been like since then, because this was actually done a few years ago. So self-love includes anything that is done in a loving way for the self. And for me, this included things like journaling, exercise, eating healthy foods, meditating, positive affirmations, and speaking kindly towards myself, among other things. I did this back in 2016 and 2017 for 365 days. The physical practice of it was different every day depending on what I was doing. Sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves, and in 2015 I felt like the little voice that I had inside of my head towards myself wasn't always very nice. And so in 2015 I made the conscious effort of shifting my inner voice to be a lot more loving towards myself and to compliment myself instead of criticizing myself, and to be encouraging towards myself instead of being abusive towards myself. And so that really started this process for me, and this self-love journey was to speak kindly to myself. And if you think about it, the only person that is with you at your birth, at your death, and every moment in between is you. So I'm the only person that is actually with me in every moment of my life. And the relationship that I have with myself is really important to have. First of all, just a healthy relationship in your life, and then to also have that as a foundation and base for the rest of your relationships in life. And so our relationships mimic the earliest foundational relationships that we had in our families, and sometimes those can be a little bit dysfunctional or a little bit unhealthy. And so it's important for us to, as adults, get to a space where, okay, we're now able to choose things for ourselves moving forward. We can shift certain things. If we aren't that kind towards ourselves or that loving towards ourselves, it might be because we didn't have an example of that growing up. And so now that we're adults, it's time for us to be that for ourselves. And then from there, we're able to create a lot healthier relationships in our lives where we're actually honoring our needs, communicating them in a kind and loving way, and also upholding boundaries when needed and communicating those in a kind and loving way. And so this is all something that takes time, and I believe having a strong relationship with the self is the first step in having healthier relationships in your life. And so that was kind of my intention going into the self-love journey. And in the last 6 or 7 years from this, I've continued this self-love practice, and it still continues to expand. I continue to heal from certain things. I continue to grow and have healthier relationships. And so it really has been about 7 years of practicing self-love every day that has come from this 1 year of consciously doing this. But now it's different because now it's just become a habit and something that I do naturally, and I just have a lot more love for myself. So it's just easier and more natural for me to do something every day in a loving way towards myself. It's so important for us to be cherishing ourselves, giving to ourselves, and to give to others from that overflow of, okay, we're building up a sense of love within ourselves and giving to others from there. And then we also don't resent others. So sometimes maybe you can recognize this in yourself, or you might have someone in your life that they're so giving, but they're also kind of resentful after they give because they've given so much, and they're just like, well, no one's giving to me, and I've given all this stuff, and now I'm completely depleted and drained. And so recognize that your needs are important and be able to communicate those in a way where you're not just doing it after you've already given and are in a resentful place, but instead recognizing, okay, I have this certain emotional need and I'm worthy of receiving it, so I'm going to communicate that up front and know that if someone loves me or really wants to have a healthy relationship with me, then they'll want to meet my needs in a certain way, or if they aren't able to, we can communicate about it and figure out together how this could best happen. And if we look at people in the world, some people who are the most critical and judgmental of others are often those who are the most critical and judgmental of themselves. And so we become better people the kinder we are to ourselves. And it's not in a narcissistic way of thinking that you're better and superior and putting others down. Like, the basis of narcissism is actually really low self-esteem, and it's just this false facade of overcompensating by pretending that you're better in a way. And so I think this is probably why people can also resist self-love, is that they're afraid of developing these narcissistic qualities. Like, when we see just even the image of narcissists, like looking at himself in the mirror and just adoring himself and thinking he's so good. But like, could you imagine a little child looking at themselves in the mirror and saying like, I am enough, I am kind, I am beautiful, I am important, I am loving, and just saying kind things about themselves? That's not narcissism. Self-love is something that is heart-centered, heart-based, and it's nothing that takes away from love from others. So you have actually a greater capacity to love others when you're also loving yourself, because you can teach by example, and that's the greatest way that we teach in life, especially if you're a parent, teaching by example and being able to help your child develop these practices, because children often do as we do and not as we say, because they're mimicking us. And the way that you care for yourself and love yourself is often the way that your children are going to grow up to care for themselves and love themselves. And if you have a type of addiction or something that's just not healthy, it can be something as simple as an addiction to technological devices, whether that's your phone, computer, TV, whatever it might be. Oftentimes your children will develop some form of addiction too, because addiction comes from a lack of social connections and a lack of love in that sense. And so if a child is neglected because their parent's addicted to something, even addicted to work, then often that child grows up into an adult that is also going to neglect themselves and often develop some form of an addiction too. And so I think we're living at a time where most adults in our society do have an addiction, at least to their cell phones or smartphones or something. So I'm not saying this to be shaming people. It's just to kind of like wake up to realize that you are valuable and you're worthy of love and care. And so that's something that as an adult, we all have to acknowledge for ourselves, is that we're all enough and we're all worthy of love and care, and to give ourselves that love to then be able to have these healthier relationships sprout out from that space. It's almost like your self-love is like a seed that you nurture, and then from there you can have a whole garden of love that's given from others. But as you do this, you can also notice that certain relationships in life where you might have accepted certain treatment before your self-love practice. Some people in your life might not be that kind to you, and it's important to also develop the strength to be able to speak up for yourself, to communicate boundaries, to communicate your needs, and recognize that it might be important to take your energy away from certain people if you're noticing that they may be abusive in certain ways, or just unkind, or they're not as loving as you now recognize you're worthy of. So that's one thing too that I've noticed, is a lot of relationships in my life have shifted, and as painful as it can be to sometimes let go of certain relationships or to have them shift or not be the same as they once were, it's also important to create that space. And now that we have a strong self-love practice, we're able to give more to ourselves and then have space for new people to enter our lives that do meet our emotional needs and who are maybe more kind, and who we're able to have this exchange that's more heart-centered and heart-based. And sometimes it's quality over quantity. And so you might have had a lot of acquaintances in your life that just might not be that kind if you actually really think about it. And if the dynamic can't really shift, then maybe you distance yourself a bit and you really choose, okay, I've got these 2 or 3 close friends who I'm able to have this heart-based connection with and have a really good relationship with. And sometimes having those 2 or 3 heart-based close friends can be a lot more healthy and fulfilling than having 20 different acquaintances where there isn't that heart-based connection. And so I'm not saying this in a way for you to just like let go of everyone in your life and just love yourself and focus on that, but it's something that sometimes that can happen when you start this self-love journey. And it's just acknowledging that sometimes things happen for the best, even though it can be hard at the time. But as you learn more how to communicate your needs and boundaries in a healthy, loving way, it can also shift relationships so that people can stay in your life, but maybe the relationship looks different than it was before. And so after these 365 days of self-love, I felt really proud of myself and accomplished. And it's something that it felt so good to have something that I was doing as a daily practice. And I liked that it could be different every day, but it was still done in a way to recognize my own value, self-worth, and to give myself more love. And then as soon as I was done the 365 days of self-love, I moved into 365 days of meditation because I wanted to continue this daily practice, and I wanted to see what benefits I could get from meditating every day and being there for myself in that way and building that stronger connection with my internal world, source, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, my soul, and see what the mental health benefits could be as well from meditating every day. So I've got a separate video on my experience meditating every day coming up. So make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and click that bell notification so you can be notified as soon as new videos are out, and you'll be able to see when my 365 days of meditations video is out, as well as many other videos that I've got coming for you. And if this video helped you at all in any way, please give it a thumbs up. It's very helpful to me, and may you be happy, healthy, and free.